2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000. In this movie that's had incredibly frenetic pacing all up until this point, and it wasn't in the script at all that this would be a long, slow beat. And it's a beautiful piece of filmmaking. Next time you see it, just let yourself linger in that moment and experience that moment where the filmmakers meant you to. But I did not realize from reading the script what a long, profound beat that would be. And I knew I had to fill that space with something awesome. So we did. We fill that space. So next time, if you read the book, next time you see the movie, you'll know what she's thinking and learning in that moment and how pivotal it ends up being.
It's another cool.
But yeah, that's something I didn't know was going to happen until I saw the film, and we were like, whoa.
Yeah, and another good example of that is like, there's all those scenes of just absolutely kinetic dialogue between Finn and Poe and Rae, where they're just like, bang, 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 bang. You know, when they all get off the Falcon and it's on fire and they're talking about the spy. And there's all these kinetic moments that even when you're reading through the script, it just doesn't work right. And then you see it and you're like, that's why. It's because we're not writing to like the pace that they had taken. And those were fun to get to constitute.
Yeah, that's a good example.
And I think all of those characters are also charismatic, those actors and actresses are also charismatic, that I think a lot of my notes when we were looking at the version after the film and we were making tweaks, it was just like, this more, this but more, this but more, because it's like, you know, John and, you know, and Daisy and everyone is just like dialing everything up because they're just like that, you know, locked in as actors and actresses. So there's a lot of like, oh, we need to do, this needs to be more. So you initially declined about the Easter egg thing. This other thing I know that you did, you will share. We'll get to share. So when we were working on an early draft of the book, so this book goes through multiple drafts. Obviously, we obviously get some drafts together, and you know things get edited, things get moved out, we get updates, get changes and stuff, and then eventually, obviously, there's also once you know there's a finished film that everyone knows is finished and done, that we can start to you know make our tweaks to again bring things in line where they need to be. But in one of the very earliest drafts, this might have actually, I think, been the first thing you shared, like the first time you shared a draft with me, you marked a couple of lines in the draft and basically told me, like, this is my hill. I really want to keep these lines. I really want to keep this thing in the manuscript if we can at all. And now, sometimes you can't, because sometimes, you know, scene completely changes and it wouldn't make sense, it would be confusing, it would be completely contradictory. But you said that, and it's in there. Do you want to share what those lines were, why they mattered so much, what it's all about?
Yeah. Okay. So. Okay. Anyone who follows me on Twitter knows that I really like Kylo Ren's hair. He has wonderful, wonderful hair. But there's this scene when it's in Hux's point of view. And Hux is a really interesting character. Some of you can see where this is going. So Hux is a wonderful character. He's really complicated, he's really angry, he's really entitled, and he does not like Kylo Ren very much at all, you may have noticed. They've got some kind of rivalry going on. So I just have to observe that that Ren's hair is an affront to everything the First Order stands for, I'm paraphrasing, because true beauty is found in order and discipline, and the Supreme Leader should be an example to people, and when Hux becomes Supreme Leader, first thing he's going to do is make Kylo Ren come. I know it's silly, but I really wanted to keep the hair joke, and they let me keep the hair joke.
Totally we talked about it again. One of the other things was an idea that we had that again, you know, if the movie didn't allow for it in terms of where the movie goes, it wasn't something we're going to force in there because again, we're here to make the novelization of the film, not the novelization of our home version of you know that's how it was. A scene where before everything goes nuts at the very end, before all the big battles, you had mentioned it was important to you to have a scene where Lando walks through the film one more time and gets couple of moments to himself
Yeah.
on the Falcon and ship that as far as we all know he hasn't seen in quite a while, but has the utmost of history with. And so getting to put that in there and take that extra
really
beat
wanted to
from
keep
it,
that, yeah.
was really cool. And there's some cool stuff in there, which again we're not gonna spoil. We'll let people find, because like I said, you could go downstairs and find out about it after. So actually, I want to take a very informal, you can sort of half raise your hand sort of thing. How many people in here are writers, who would aspire to be writers, who would like to be writers, have thought about being a writer, think writing's cool? All right, cool. Cool. So one of the things I definitely want to do is I want, because we get asked this all the time, and so I want to make sure that we talk to someone who is writing and writing Star Wars, is to ask one or two questions about, let's say somebody out there is like, I am going to write I'm going to write the next Star Wars novelization. Or someday I am going to write a Star Wars novelization or a Star Wars novel I'm going to write for Star Wars. What's like your best, biggest piece of advice for how to do that? Or how to not do that? Or,
I would say write your own stuff first. Just because, remember Slytherin? So I'm going to get real businessy with you for just a second. The line of authors who want to write Star Wars is very, very long. And so there was a time, I think, when you could get into intellectual property projects kind of as a new author, but those days are gone. So you have to already get published first before you start writing for Star Wars. So there might be a path through comics or TV writing, or even, I know some really good up-and-coming authors who got started blogging Star Wars stuff. So there is a path, there are a few different pathways, but you have to do some writing first, and you have to show that you can hit deadlines and be professional, understand story structure, all that stuff. My second piece of advice would be, if you like to write fan fiction, knock yourself out. I think that I've never been big into fan fiction, but I think it's a really good way to learn. When you play in someone else's sandbox first, even before you start creating your own, once you learn about the limits of a world, you'll start automatically applying that to your own stuff. So if fan fiction is the thing that keeps you in your chair at your keyboard writing because it's motivating to you, knock yourself out. It's really good practice. I have several friends who started writing fan fiction. Of course, they can't publish any of that, and of course that doesn't make any impact at all on their published body of work, but they loved it, and they honed their skills doing it. So if that's something you're interested in, go for it. And then if you do get that call to write for Star Wars, don't panic. You have to approach it with all humility. You have to be like, this is not my world, this is someone else's, and I just get to play in it. And that means you won't be the final arbiter of all decisions on the work, and you just have to be okay with that and even joyful in that. I find that limits are actually inspiring. A really quick example is a writing prompt. You know, someone says, here's a picture, and there's a moon, and the sky is bluish, and there's a lone figure walking along a sand dune. Go write a story. Well, suddenly you have inspiration. You've been given limits. And then suddenly your mind explodes with all these possibilities. And it's the same when you write for someone else's property. It's not your property, but learn to embrace those limits that are placed upon you and use them as creative fuel instead of something that tamps down your creativity. It can actually cause an explosion of creativity. Yeah.
Also, if you come with me, then I will send you cat photos.
Also, you get cat photos.
And you also get feedback from the cats.
So what about you, Tom, as an editor working with Star Wars? What are you looking for when you're looking for an author to work with you?
I don't know how it's going to
I know. But it's only fair.
Right? So what am I looking for? So I think being enthusiastic about Star Wars, being a big fan of Star Wars, is
That's
great.
a problem, huh? Being enthusiastic
No,
about Star
that's
Wars.
always great. However, having an encyclopedic knowledge of Star Wars is not a prerequisite. No. Because, for instance, say I have someone come write for me and they're like, well, I don't know what this blaster or what this ship might totally be called. Cool, just write, insert blaster name here. Because I can fill in what the blaster name is. I can pick a ship, pick whatever we need, flora, fauna, random alien species to fill out the background of the scene. But what I can't really do, because I'm not a writer, and what I can't do in terms of imparting to someone is how to block out a good scene, how to develop a good character arc, how to embed themes, how to create, imagine, like very vivid dialogue and things like that. So having enthusiasm for Star Wars is great, but memorizing Wikipedia is not a prerequisite to writing Star Wars, which is something that I always remind people, because sometimes people are like, well, I don't think I know enough about Star Wars to write for Star Wars. You probably don't. So there's always that. But the other thing that I'm just looking for is someone who has very much their own voice and perspective on stories. Because when we bring someone in to write for Star Wars, obviously novelization is a little different because again, you're adapting a film, so there's not quite as much, of original, composition there. But when I bring someone in to write a Star Wars story, the thing I always say is, well, whose voice and whose writing style would make this Star Wars story the best version of itself? Because I always want to pair, and we always want to pair, the best author with the best story, because if they're best suited for that story, they're going to flourish as an author. They're going to have a great time writing it, they're going to create a great story, and all of that is going to come out when you sit down and read the pages of that story. Every time you've read a Star Wars book, you've been like, oh, I love this book. Oh, this is a great book, this is an amazing book. It's because that author was just so totally dialed in into writing the exact story that not only they wanted to write, but they knew they could write because of their writing style. I'm not going to have someone come write a Star Wars story if it doesn't fit what they can write. Which is why it's so important to build up your own identity as a writer, because those are the things that me and the other editors are going to read to kind of distill and figure out what is the Star Wars story that's right for you. And it might take a year, 2 years, it might take a while after I figure out, oh my god, this person would be great to write for Star Wars, to find the right story for them. It might happen instantaneously, it goes both ways. But that's why we always talk about it being so important for finding writers who have their own voice and identity, because I'm not asking you to come write a Star Wars story, I'm asking you to come write your version of the Star Wars story. Because that's what we need. We need your voice to make the galaxy far, far away a cooler, bigger, better, more impressive place. If I just wanted someone to write like the same Star Wars story, it's like, well, I don't know, that doesn't seem like a totally fun thing to do. So that's why we always talk about original writing and establishing yourself as a writer in your own voice being so important. It's because that's the part that matters when you bring authors in. Yeah. Cool. I don't like that too much.
I should have warned you.
That's okay. That's totally. We're going to wrap up in a minute or two, a couple minutes. Before we get too far towards the end and people might be rushing in and out, I just want to remind people, if you would like to come to the signing at the end of this, still plenty of time, so again, you don't have to go running. Autograph table 3, which if you head down and head towards like the back of the room over that way on the main floor, that's where the autograph tables are, should be at table 3. They should have copies of The Rise of Skywalker there at that signing, but if they don't, there will be other ones available. We might be able to get some more product for you, so if you're interested in buying the book. And if you want to get one of these cool High Republic posters, you can come by booth 621. We'll have them like all weekend. We'll have some tomorrow and some Sunday, so if like you can't get there right this moment because you're going to come see Rae at the autographing table, that's cool. All right, I'm going to ask you like 2 or 3 like kind of quick fire, just like yes or no sort of questions.
Try to
keep a straight face. Yes, okay. Let me see. Are we, in the book, are we going to get any more information from Leia about her time training with her?
Yes.
Are we going to find out anything more about what our not friend Palpatine was up to?
Oh yeah.
Are we gonna get more, aside from his pithy comment about Kylo's hair, about Hux?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, great. All right.
Though the hair is the most important.
Double check with you. Are we going to get to see? No.
I'm not gonna say that.
Not gonna. Okay, I'm gonna ask. This is totally free and clear. There's no obligation.
Okay.
I'll even go la 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 during. If you could write any Star Wars story you want.
Oh my gosh, are you sure you want to hear this?
Sure. Like I said,
Okay. I want to write the story of Ray's parents. In my mind, it is an epic love story where they find each other over incredible odds and have this child that they know is special. And how do they escape?
Ooh.
Well, Palpatine doesn't like that. He is not happy with that. Just gonna stand.
Anyways, yeah, I just see that as an epic love story, adventure story, that we know ends in tragedy, but by writing their story, you can also bring a bit of light and triumph to it. And I think those two very briefly seen characters deserve that moment of triumph.
All I heard was this very high-pitched whine.
Yeah, but it's just between us, this stays between us. Yeah.
Just among the friends here in this room.
Oh, and like yours again, I wouldn't mind writing in the High Republic. Like, who doesn't want to write a story in the High Republic?
That's true. It's going to be super. Looking forward to
Very
August.
excited.
When everyone gets to see the cool book with, it's like Wookiee Jedi. Is there anything about this fair book here that we haven't talked about that you're like, you know what, he should have asked me? Or like, I really wish he had asked me about this thing. We want to talk about this thing.
I think there's some things I'm glad you didn't ask
Okay, cool.
me about.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll keep those to myself.
All right.
I'm really excited for you all to get a little more insight into some of these characters. I think that was the thing that was the most important to me, was, can you all hear me back since I'm not using my feedback microphone? That, I think, was the thing that was the most important to me. I wanted to know what these characters were thinking and feeling along the way. And where I had creative room to do that, I did that as much as I could, given the project and the circumstances that I had. So I hope you'll read with an eye to that, thinking about what these characters are thinking or feeling, and how the book is different from the film. Not because it's a different story, but it's just a different angle on the same story, which I really loved.
The book actually opens in a different place than the movie opened, very intentional. And so there's a few other cool things that you'll get to see. And the cool thing is, because the book now comes out on 3/17, that happens to be also the same day the movie comes out on digital. So you get the experience of, you can pick up the book, unless you obviously have to show beforehand, experience the book, then you can go back and watch the scenes, watch the whole movie, read, watch. The book also got obviously an audiobook and stuff, if anyone is a big fan of audiobooks. I believe it's the wonderful Mark Thompson who is going to be reading the audiobook for Rise of Skywalker. So you will get to have that fun experience of watching a Star Wars scene and then going to the novelization scene and getting all of that extra awesome detail, all the interiority of those characters, and what they are thinking about and struggling with and working through, even as, jetpack stormtroopers are exploding above them, or giant snakes under the sand are trying to feed off them, and all that good stuff. We are going to wrap up here just a minute or two early, because again, I want to give everyone plenty of time if they want to head down to where the autographing area is. I don't want anyone to feel rushed. I just want to thank everyone on behalf of everybody who works, particularly at Del Rey and Lucasfilm on all the Star Wars books, for reading, for coming to the panel, for checking out these books and all the others that are coming in this year. There is so much cool Star Wars stuff. I've been doing this now for 5 years. I've been doing this since the day A New Dawn published, so for a long time I've been doing this. There is so much cool Star Wars book stuff coming now and into the future. I cannot wait for you guys to meet everything, for you guys to see everything that's coming. It's going to be a lot of fun. So thank you, everyone, and I'd like to thank Rae one more time for writing. We'll be at the booth all weekend at 6:21. So if you think of a question or you want to come check out some of the other books or get one of the posters, definitely come hang out with us. We've got plenty of time. We can chat. Thank you.